In this next section, we're going to talk about talking with your children, connectedness, and support systems. So let's get started. When considering talking with your children, it's important to honor what they want. This is different than giving them what they want. It's making sure that they know that they've been heard. If your child comes to you and says that, hey, I want an allowance, and that's not something that financially you can give them right now, you don't just flat out say, no, you can't get any more money, because if you just give them an outright no, and they say, hey, Dad, I could use some money, or hey, Mom, I could use an allowance, and you're like, nope, you don't get that. You're usually going to get a reaction back to them. Well, why not? This is what I want. Why can't I have it? So if you phrase it differently by saying, that's not something I hear that that's what you want right now. That's not something that we can afford. I would love to revisit this in the future and see if we can come up with some kind of system of giving you an allowance, maybe based off of grades, maybe based off of chores that you do around the house. So I can't give you that now, but we can build to that for the future. So again, there's having that discussion with them instead of just shutting them down. If you shut them down immediately, you're not honoring what they have to say, so they're not heard. So that's where you get that reaction. This also can apply to your relationships. If your family says, hey, do you want to come over from dinner? And you're like, no. Yeah, they're not going to take that very well. But if you said, I hear that you want me to come over for dinner. I'm not able to right now. I'm having transportation issues, or I have plans tonight. Can we maybe try again for next week? It's about the message that you send. It's, about honoring the person who's asking for whatever it is that they're asking for. You don't have to give it to them necessarily. It's making sure that they feel heard. It's the same kind of thing. Put yourself in a different situation. And what if you were the one asking for something? You put your hat in your hands and you go to your employer and you say, hey, I need the day off. No. They may react that way, but that kind of hurts the heart. It's kind of like, oh, I didn't like hearing that. So that's why it would be great as if your employer said, I understand, Joe, that you want the day off. Unfortunately, 5 other people have asked for the day off, so I'm not able to give it to you. That just sounds more respectful. So if you can do that same kind of thing when engaging with your children, that's going to help you build that relationship with them. Send good messages to yourself, the way that they view themselves, that they might be a failure, they're not good enough, they're struggling. You're going to mimic good behavior for them. I'm smart, I'm goal-oriented, I'm going to get there, I have a future. You're going to show them, the positives. You want to avoid bad labels. If you're labeling somebody as lazy or stupid, if you're calling your children these things, they're going to grow up believing those things about themselves. And again, those messages I just discussed, that's going to be the mantra in their head, is that these bad labels, they're not going to, if that's all they hear, that's all they're going to believe. So you want to make sure and be uplifting and encouraging when talking to your family and to your children. Focus on the end goal. Again, you took the step of coming to this program. You took the step of giving yourself that second chance to come in and restart life, basically. Learn some skills, get help with housing and with employment. That's important. So what you want to do is be able to help your children focus on their long-term goals. If they're struggling in school right now, and you just say, you need to do better, maybe talk to them about, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And it might be, I see myself in the 11th grade in 5 years. Okay, but what do you want that to look like? Do you want that to look like where you're struggling or you're at the risk of failure? Or do you want to want that to look like it's a successful, school career? So helping them look at their long-term by showing them what long-term goals you're working on can help, again, build that connection. And this isn't just with children, again, it applies to all the relationships, helping people focus on what the long-term is. We've talked about conflict, we've talked about anger, we've talked about troubled relationships. Thinking about those, if you're struggling in those troubled relationships, maybe asking, what's the long-term goal here? This seems to be our pattern that we keep getting into as far as arguing and not being able to have a conversation about finances. Where are we going to be in 5 years? You know, some may not like that conversation, but it's a conversation that needs to be had in the sense of it will help you work through those dynamics. Focus on what your children can learn. You know, we focus on what's going wrong too much in society, but what can you learn from the situation? What lesson can there be? Let's say that, you know, your child failed a test. Okay, instead of punishing them in the sense of like, you're stupid, you're bad, you know, those negative labels we just mentioned, approach it differently and say, what can you learn from having failed this test? What are you going to do differently next time? You know, it's about the positive that they can take from that. The negative is obviously failing the test, but from that, there's a lesson here. What can we learn? You know, you can reflect on yourself from your past. You know, these choices that I made in my past helped me learn in the future to avoid this or to do this. So, child, what can help you learn from this situation? Let's look at connectedness. Now, thinking about connections, this is a little bit different than support systems. Looking at, for a lot of people, it's a spirituality, it's faith or religion, and these are three separate things. It doesn't always have to be a belief in God, belief in a higher power. Faith is a belief in a strong idea. You know, it doesn't have to necessarily be a person, it's what you believe in. The important thing is to make a connection to something bigger than yourself. Kind of getting away from selfishness, you know, and focusing on what else is there, what's something bigger than me. By focusing on this bigger picture, you're more likely to focus on your long-term goals and see and go further in that sense. So that's why it doesn't always have to be that there's a specific religious component to it, but what is it that you're believing in that's going to help you focus on the future? So religion is a specific way, but spirituality and faith is belief in something other than yourself. So again, getting outside of just that almost selfishness, you know, that we as humans are prone to. That's what we're almost kind of designed for, but it's looking outside of ourselves that's going to help us. So you can care about others and your well-being at the same time. You know, it's that self-care, and you can show spirituality without being a spiritual person. It doesn't have to be that you are religious. You can focus on what might help others. By making this connection and helping us think outside of ourselves, it can help us with stress. It can help us with conflict management. It can help us in our relationships, because again, we're focusing on that bigger picture. And so if I'm in conflict, let's say with this individual, how is that going to affect my bigger picture of what it is that I'm looking for in life and that connection? So now let's look at getting help from your support network. Who do you turn to for support? Okay, what are some characteristics? Just like we looked at characteristics of positive relationships in the first video, what are some characteristics of supportive relationships? Again, trust. I'm pretty sure that that has been listed everywhere, okay? We've talked about communication, flexibility, being reliable. These are all things that are also significant in positive relationships, because you want your supportive relationships to also be positive. You know, if it's not a positive relationship, but let's say they always answer the phone when you call, and that's a form of support, but when they pick you up and take you somewhere, they kind of berate you and bring you down for choices, for maybe how you're living your life, that sort of thing. is that really a supportive relationship? Because it's missing the component of being a positive relationship, because they're bringing you down emotionally, but they're supporting you by giving you a ride or maybe giving you money. So that's not there's an imbalance there, and it's important for your supportive relationships to also be positive relationships. And if one is over the other, it might be time to look at maybe you need to find a different support network. So some questions to consider when you're thinking about your support network is, how do you feel about asking for help? Is it hard for you or easy for you to do? For some people, that's a struggle. You know, it can be seen as a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of that we're not experts at everything. And sometimes we need a leg up. Sometimes we need some help navigating things, you know. Again, I may have mentioned a couple of times, you took that first step of joining this program. That's a form of asking for help. That's a form of saying, I can't do this on my own. And that's okay. We're the experts here. We're the ones that specialize in this. That's why we have programs like this, is because this is a difficult thing to navigate re-entering society. So it's okay to ask for help. And sometimes we need to be like retrained in that and go through that procedure again and again to get comfortable with it. So is it harder for you asking for emotional support or concrete help? So like maybe asking somebody for $5 is easy, but if I say, hey, I need somebody to listen to me, that's a little bit harder. These are not cut and dry questions or anything like that. It's just for you to start pondering, you know, because as you are building relationships or reunifying with relationships that you were in the past, think about how you navigate them, you know, who you turn to for emotional support, who you turn to for concrete help. And is there a way to blend those? Are you getting your needs met? Now, one big thing to consider is that Operation New Hope is part of your new support system. You have lots of tools and resources that you're being given through this program. You have a case manager, you have a health and wellness therapist, the mental health therapist I've also mentioned a few times during this. You have a job coach. The entire Ready for Work team is here and doing everything we can to help this be a successful program for you. Your success is our success. We signed you up for a reason. You know, we look forward to you completing your second chance and getting out there and being back in society, getting employed and on your own. It's going to be fantastic. So remember, this is a support network for you as well. We're new to you. And it's going to take some like getting to know each other as far as what we can do for you and things like that, and maybe getting a comfort level with asking for help. But that's what we are here for. So I want to make sure that you're aware that we're a part of that support network you now have. So this wraps up our course on family reunification and relationships. Part of your course requirements is you're supposed to do you're reflecting on what you got from the course. So here are some questions for you to consider. What are some examples of positive qualities to have in a relationship? Who is a positive example in your life? What are some examples of good listening skills that you already utilize? Why is awareness of nonverbal communication important? We talked about that. The posturing, the how you're coming across, is your message of what you're saying matching your nonverbal, your body, you know, your body language. What are some triggers for stress and how do you cope? And who's your support system and how do they support you? These are just some general questions to kind of get you thinking as you do that reflecting. Again, we are so excited that you joined our program. We look forward to helping you in every way we possibly can. And I thank you again for watching this presentation. Have a wonderful day.